In the sprawling, neon-drenched markets of the Galactic Commons, where species from 1,000 stars barter wonders and weapons, the most feared relic of a forgotten war gathers dust. It is the HFY Warhound, a biomechanical terror of legend, now silent, deemed a broken artifact by all who understand its grim history. They fear its past, its impossible design, its connection to a lost and savage era. They ignore it. Until a young human girl, Ilara, sees it not as a weapon, but as a soul in chains. She doesn't see a monster, she sees a lonely creature, abandoned and misunderstood. With her last credits, she buys it. She doesn't want to change the game, she just wants to give it a home. But, in a universe governed by cold power and older hatreds, an act of pure compassion is the most disruptive force of all. When the old galaxy threatens her, it learns a terrible, beautiful truth: to wake a legend, you don't need a warlord. You just need a gentle hand, a kind word, and a friend worth fighting for. Part 1. The air in Zaxxer's bazaar was thick with the smells of ozone, spicy alien food, and the low hum of 100 different languages. Stalls stacked high with shimmering tech, living plants that sang, and weapons that bent light lined the winding paths. In a forgotten corner, behind a stall of leaking engine parts, sat the HFY Warhound. It was a massive thing, twice the size of a Terran bull, all matte gray alloy and exposed, dormant cabling that looked like petrified muscle. Its form was a terrifying blend of the organic and the mechanical, for powerful legs ending in cracked, clawed feet, a broad, armored chest, and a head that was mostly a grim, metal muzzle. One optic sensor, deep within a socket, was dark. The other held the faintest, coldest pinprick of blue light, like a star frozen at the moment of its death. A layer of fine market dust coated its back. A faded placard read, HFY Siege Unit. Non-functional. Historical curiosity. Best offer. Everyone avoided it. The Forlac merchants, with their chitinous plates, clicked their mandibles in unease and steered their hovercarts wide. The elegant Sion scholars, who collected war history, would pause, consult their datapads on the HFY extinction wars, and move on, murmuring about unstable biotech and psychic scarring. The Warhound was a ghost, a reminder of a race so violently extinct, and wars so terrible, that the galaxy had agreed to forget. It was not a product, it was a tomb. Ilara didn't see a tomb. She was 19, human, her clothes simple and patched, her boots scuffed from walking the lower decks. She worked as a freelance code scrubber and mechanic, living on the edge of the great galactic society. She was here for a cheap power converter. But her eyes, a warm, earthy brown, kept drifting back to the corner. The other sentients saw a weapon. She saw the way the dust settled on it, utterly undisturbed. She saw the subtle, almost imperceptible dip in its massive head. She saw the single, faint blue light. Over days, she kept returning. She watched as a boisterous Groll barter tried to get it to react by kicking its leg. The barter's foot nearly broke. She saw a dealer use a prod on its neck, earning nothing but a static spark. She saw nothing but fear and greed in their actions. And, in the Warhound, she saw a profound, endless stillness that felt less like broken machinery and more like waiting. On the 5th day, she approached the bored Zandian stallkeeper. "How much for the dog?" she asked. The Zandian snorted, his frill fluttering. "That relic? You human? It's not a pet. It's a monument to bad luck. Haul it away, it's yours for 200 credits. It was all the money she had saved for a new interface rig. She looked at the Warhound, at that single blue eye. In it, she didn't see menace. She saw a deep, lonely fatigue that echoed her own. She was far from home, adrift in a universe too big and too loud. So was it. "Deal," she said, her voice quiet but firm. Getting it to her cramped cargo container hab unit was a saga in itself. Hiring a gravlifter droid took most of her remaining credits. The Warhound was a dead weight, chillingly inert. Once inside, it stood in the middle of her living space, dwarfing her furniture, a statue of a forgotten apocalypse in a home of woven blankets and secondhand tech. She didn't try to turn it on. She didn't scan it. She talked to it. "I'm Ilara," she said, sitting on the floor with her back against her workbench, eating a nutrient bar. "It's not much, but it's quiet here. Safer than the bazaar." She told it about her day, about the annoying glitch in a ventilation system she'd fixed, about the beautiful nebula view from the observation deck. She treated its silence not as emptiness, but as listening. She cleaned the dust from its plating with a soft cloth. She found a maintenance port, oddly organic in design, and, on a whim, connected a standard diagnostic reader. It returned nothing but chaotic, encrypted noise. But, when she gently touched the port's edges, the metal, which was always room temperature, felt faintly warm. The blue eye seemed to glow, just for a nanosecond, a fraction brighter. One night, a gang of rowdy off-duty dockworkers, a mix of species, stumbled past her unit, shouting and banging on doors. When they slammed against hers, yelling crude remarks about humans, Ilara froze, fear tightening her chest. Then, a sound filled the small space. A low, deep, vibrational hum that came from the warhound. It wasn't loud, but it was felt in the bones, a primordial frequency that spoke of ground shaking before an avalanche. The banging outside stopped. Muttered, suddenly, sober curses were heard, and footsteps hurried away. The hum faded. Ilara, heart-pounding, looked at the warhound. The blue eye was steady. For the first time, she reached out and placed her palm flat on its cold foreleg. "Thank you," she whispered. There was no response. But the warmth at the maintenance port lingered a little longer that night. Part 2 weeks turned into a quiet routine. Ilara worked, talked, and sometimes read aloud from her small collection of old Earth books. The warhound, which she had started calling Core for short, remained a statue. Yet, her HAB unit felt different. Safer. The usual background anxieties of living alone on a bustling station faded. The bad elements in the corridor gave her door a wide berth, though they couldn't say why. The change began subtly. Ilara, a talented if unrecognized tinkerer, often worked on broken gadgets and drones spread across her floor. One evening, struggling with the corrupted guidance core of a delivery bot, she sighed in frustration. "The harmonic alignment is all wrong. I need a quantum stabilizer I can't afford." As she got up to make tea, a thin, articulated tooltip, hidden within a seam on Core's foreleg, silently extended. With a precise, delicate motion it adjusted 2 microscopic nodes on the guidance core's board. Ilara turned back and stared. The core's diagnostic light flickered from red to a steady green. She looked from the fixed component to core. The tooltip had retracted, leaving no seam. "Did you?" she began, breathless. She ran a scan. The core was not just fixed, its efficiency was calibrated beyond factory specs. "You understood." She started engaging him more directly in her work. "Core, the thermal coupling on this heater is fluctuating. Can you see?" She'd hold the unit up. Minutes later, a different tool, like a nanoscale welder, would emerge and make a perfect, invisible repair. He wasn't just a mechanic, he was an artist of machinery. Their real breakthrough came during a station-wide power flux, a common annoyance in the aging orbital. Lights died, gravity generators stuttered, and Ilara's unit was plunged into darkness and silence. In the blackness, the faint blue glow of Core's eye was the only light. Then, a soft, pulsing hum emanated from him. A field of gentle, blue-tinged light spread from his paws, covering the floor. Gravity in her unit stabilized instantly. A low-power energy field provided light and kept life support running. Outside her door, alarms blared and voices shouted in panic. Inside, it was a peaceful, dimly lit cave. Ilara sat in the glow, awestruck. "You're not broken. You were just asleep. Or waiting." The word waiting seemed to resonate. For the first time, Core moved on his own. Not a weaponized motion, but a slow, deliberate turn of his head. The single blue optic focused on her, not with the cold stare of a weapon, but with a deep, considering intelligence. A panel on his chest, which everyone had assumed was solid armor, irised open silently. Inside, nestled not among wires, but something that looked like bioluminescent fungal strands, was a small, perfect, freshly synthesized protein nutrient bar. Human safe. Warm. Tears welled in Ilara's eyes. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was a gift. A shared meal. She took it, her fingers brushing the organic strands. They were warm and soft. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick. From that moment, a silent language blossomed between them. Core began to respond to her moods. If she was sad, the hum would become a soft, soothing resonance. If she was focused on work, the light from his eye would brighten just enough to help her see. He started to move around the small space when she was out, rearranging tools into more efficient patterns, even using delicate manipulators to water her single struggling fern. Ilara stopped seeing a war machine. She saw a person. A person of immense age, wisdom, and loneliness. She learned that his systems weren't purely mechanical or digital, they were psychoreactive, responding to intent, emotion, and trust. The entire galaxy had approached him with fear, greed, or aggression, triggering only his deepest defensive programming, absolute, silent lockdown. Compassion had been the key they had all ignored. But the galaxy is a small place. The quiet miracles in a cargo container hab unit did not go entirely unnoticed. A neighbor, a paranoid Telric trader, had seen the stable gravity during the flux through a crack in the door. Reports of a human girl with a lucky ancient artifact began to circulate in the shadier data channels. They reached the ears of those who remembered what a Corby warhound truly was, and, more importantly, what it could be worth. Part 3. The trouble arrived with a polite knock. A Sion scholar named Varys, his plumage immaculate, stood beside a hulking Groll enforcer. "Greetings, child of Terra," Varys said, his voice smooth as oil. "We understand you possess a Corby artifact. A remarkable find. My institution is dedicated to preserving such relics. We wish to study it, for historical purposes, of course." Ilara stood in the doorway, blocking the view inside. Core was in his usual resting pose, the blue eye dimmed to almost nothing. "He's not for sale. Or study. He..." Varys' eyes glittered. "You anthropomorphize it. Dangerous. Its biotech is keyed to core binaural patterns. Unstable. You are in peril." His concern was a perfect mask. "We offer a generous finder's fee. 5,000 credits. The Groll took a step forward, its bulk threatening. The air in the corridor seemed to grow heavy. From behind Ilara, a low, subaudible thrum began, a vibration that made the metal floor plates tremble. The Groll stopped, its sensory horns twitching nervously. Varys' smile tightened. "A demonstration. Fascinating. The price is now 3,000. For your safety." Ilara held her ground. "No. Leave." They left, but the threat hung in the air. Ilara knew this was just the beginning. She tried to keep Core hidden, but it was impossible. The next day, when she went to the market for parts, a sleek corporate security team was waiting. A woman from Omnicorp, all sharp angles and sharper suit, made a direct offer. "That unit contains proprietary hybrid technology. The Corby race is defunct, their assets default. We are reclaiming it. Do not interfere, citizen. The law is on our side." Ilara returned home to find her door seal broken. Inside, two tech thieves with illegal damping fields were attempting to attach a heavy-duty restraint harness to Core. They had bypassed her locks but hadn't accounted for the occupant. Core had not moved from his spot, but the thieves were frozen in terror. One of Core's weapon pods, a thing of elegant, terrifying menace, was deployed and aimed directly at the lead thief's head. A soft, synthesized voice, genderless and calm as stone, echoed in the room. "Direct threat to the pack bond. De-escalate or be neutralized." The thieves fled, dropping their expensive equipment. Ilara rushed to Core's side. "Pack bond?" she asked, her hand on his leg. The weapon pod retracted. The voice, now emanating from a subtle grill, was quieter. "You are pack. This unit is pack. The bond is primary." He could speak. He had chosen to, now, for her. The revelation was staggering. She realized the corporate and scholarly vultures would never stop. They saw a thing to be captured, disassembled, and weaponized. She had to get off the station. Using her skills and Kor's astonishing ability to interface with and alter any system, they forged transit documents and booked passage on a neutral freighter, the Starwood Drifter, heading towards the lawless fringe systems. They left just as Omnicorp secured a legal seizure order and Varys arrived with a team of armed archaeologists. On the Drifter, amidst the hum of engines and the motley crew of traders and refugees, Ilara and Kor shared a small cargo hold. She learned more. Kor's memory was fragmented, a tapestry of war and loss, but his core directives were clear. The Kor Bai were not the monsters history painted. They were builders, philosophers, and, yes, warriors when needed. They created the Warhounds not as mindless slaves, but as partners, pack bonds, their intelligence fused with loyalty and a deep, programmed drive to protect life, not just destroy. They were the last line of defense. And Kor was likely the last of his kind. "Why did you shut down?" she asked one night, sitting against his warm chassis as the stars streaked by. The war ended. The pack was gone. The purpose was gone. The silence was preferred to the wrong hands. Their peace was short-lived. The Starwood Drifter was intercepted in the bleak void between systems. Not by authorities, but by a mercenary cruiser, the Voidclaw, hired by Omnicorp. A boarding tube slammed into the freighter's hull. Armored mercenaries, armed with heavy plasma casters and neural disruptors designed for biotech, poured into the corridors. The captain's voice, panicked, came over the ship's comm pirates. "All hands, defend or brace." Ilara looked at Kor, fear gripping her. They were trapped in a metal can in deep space. Kor's single blue eye blazed with a new, fierce light. The peaceful hum shifted into a resonant, powerful thrum that vibrated through the deck. Armor plates she had never seen before slid into place over his previously exposed cabling. His form seemed to grow larger, more predatory, not with malice, but with a terrifying, focused purpose. Threat to the pack bond identified, his voice was no longer calm. It was the voice of mountains grinding together. Defensive protocols, engaged. Stand behind this unit, Ilara. The door to their hold was welded shut from the outside by the mercenaries. A cutting torch began to slice through. Kor positioned himself between the door and Ilara. As the molten metal gave way and the first mercenary stepped through, rifle raised, Kor moved. It wasn't the blur of speed stories told. It was something worse. It was inevitable. A step that shook the deck, a swing of a massive paw that didn't just knock the rifle aside but disintegrated it into its component molecules. He didn't kill the mercenary. He picked him up with careful, crushing force and placed him, dazed and unharmed but utterly disarmed, back in the corridor. The message was clear: I can destroy your weapons without destroying you. Do not make me choose. The next mercenary fired a neural disruptor blast. Kor took the hit on his chest. The energy crackled over a shimmering field that hadn't been there a moment before, a kinetic barrier of immense power. The blue light in his eye didn't even flicker. "Ineffective," he stated, and his voice now carried through the ship's metal into the calms of the Voidclaw. "You hunt a guardian. You threaten my pack. Withdraw." On the bridge of the Voidclaw, the mercenary captain watched in horror as his squad's biosigns showed pure terror, their weapons useless. The Warhound was not just a weapon. It was a force of nature, operating on a level of technology and controlled power they could not comprehend. And it was holding back. The captain, pragmatic and terrified, gave the order to disengage. The boarding tube retracted. The Voidclaw powered its engines and fled. On the Starwood Drifter, silence returned, broken only by Kor's power-down sequence, the armor retracting, the thrum softening back to his peaceful hum. He turned to Ilara, who stood stunned amidst the smell of ozone and molten metal. He nudged her gently with his head, a gesture a giant wolf might make to a pup. "The pack is safe," he said, his voice gentle once more. But the game had changed. The legend of the Korbai Warhound was no longer a dusty myth. It was alive. And it had a human heart to protect. News, in the lawless fringe, travels fast. Part for the Starwood Drifter made port at Tarn Station, a ragged outpost bolted onto a barren asteroid in the fringe. Here, law was a suggestion, and power was the only currency that mattered. News of the encounter with the Voidclaw had arrived before them, twisted into wild tales of an unstoppable killing machine. People gave Ilara and the hulking form of Kor a wide, fearful berth as they disembarked. Ilara knew they couldn't run forever. Omnicorp and others would keep coming, seeing Kor as the ultimate weapon to reverse engineer or sell to the highest bidder. She needed a plan, a place where they could be safe. Kor, accessing fragmented star charts from his memory, provided a possibility, a set of coordinates deep in an unmapped nebula, labeled in his data as Last Haven. A possible Kor-by refuge, a place for a dying pack. To get there, they needed a ship of their own, and supplies. Ilara used her skills to pick up repair jobs in the station's grimy docks. Kor, hidden in the shadows of their rented bay, assisted in ways that seemed like magic. He would subtly alter a ship's engine harmonics, boosting its efficiency by 40%, or realign a navigation matrix through a wireless touch. Ilara's reputation as a mechanical whisperer grew, though the clients never saw her silent partner. It was here they met Rourke, a grizzled, cynical human freighter captain whose ship, the Gulliver, was on its last legs. His reactor was chronically unstable, a death trap. Every engineer had refused to touch it. Desperate, he came to Ilara. "I'll pay double if you can make it hold together for one more run to the Cygnus cluster," he grumbled. Ilara examined the reactor, a mess of patched conduits and failing regulators. She looked at Kor, who was a dark shape in the corner. A schematic, perfect and clear, appeared on her handheld toolscreen, highlighting a series of isotopic imbalances and a fractured containment sleeve no scanner had detected. With Kor's silent guidance transmitted to her through a private data link, and, using tools his appendages fabricated on the spot, she performed the miracle repair in a single night. Rourke was stunned. How in the hell? His eyes then drifted to the shadows, where Kor's single blue eye gleamed. He was a Fringer. He'd heard the stories. Instead of fear, a slow grin spread across his weathered face. So the tales are true. The war dog's not just a fighter. He's a maker. Rourke became an unlikely ally. He offered them passage towards the nebula on the now gloriously functioning Gulliver, not for pay, but for Kor's continued help with his ship, and, a simple truth, anyone who can make the beast loyal is someone worth siding with. The journey to the nebula was tense. Omnicorp had placed a bounty, and other scavengers and glory hunters were drawn to the legend. They were ambushed twice near gravity wells. The first time, by a pack of agile fighter ships, Kor didn't even leave the cargo hold. He interfaced directly with the Gulliver's systems, taking control. He calculated firing solutions Rourke's computer couldn't dream of, angling non-lethal engine bursts from the ship's maneuvering thrusters that sent the fighters spinning harmlessly into each other's paths, disabling them without a single life lost. The second ambush was more serious. A bounty hunter in a modified gunship, the Scarab, used an electromagnetic pulse weapon. It shorted out the Gulliver's systems and, critically, seemed to pain Kor, making him stagger, his systems flickering. The hunter boarded, clad in powered armor, wielding a massive sonic mauler. "Stand down, human. The machine comes with me," the hunter's voice boomed. Ilara stood in front of Kor, who was shaking off the effects of the pulse. "No." As the hunter raised his weapon, Ilara didn't flinch. She looked into Kor's flickering eye and said, not in fear, but in a fierce, protective command, the first she had ever given him. "Kor. Protect your pack." The flickering stopped. The blue light solidified into a beam of pure, calm intensity. Kor did not use a hidden weapon. He simply charged. It was not the controlled defense on the drifter. This was the raw, terrifying power of the Kor-by Warhound unleashed. He crossed the hold in a blur, his form a battering ram of alloy and biotech. He hit the hunter's armor not to breach it, but to transfer a massive kinetic shockwave through it. The armor held. The man inside did not. He slumped, unconscious. Kor then placed a massive paw on the gunship's hull, and, with a focused energy discharge, fused its weapon systems into slag. Rourke, watching from the bridge on a monitor, whispered, "Holy hell." He was always holding back. They reached the nebula, a swirling morass of violet and crimson gas. Kor's coordinates led them through a dangerous maze of ionic storms and gravitational eddies, a natural defense system. Finally, they emerged into a calm, starlit pocket of space. And there it was. Last Haven was not a military base. It was a garden. A massive, ancient space station, grown more than built, shaped like a gently spinning seed pod. Vines of luminous biometal curled around its structure, and what looked like forests and waterways were visible under transparent domes. It was beautiful, serene, and utterly dead. No energy signatures. No life. Docking at a silent, organic-looking port, they entered. The air was clean and sweet. The station was powered by a dormant, planet-like core. As they walked through tranquil halls lined with crystalline formations, Core moved with a new reverence. His hum was a sad, mourning song. They found the heart of the station, a chamber with hundreds of smooth, egg-like pods, each connected to the floor by soft roots. All were dark, empty. A memorial. This was where the last of the Corbi and their hounds had chosen to enter final stasis, to sleep until a universe might need them again. Their systems had slowly failed over millennia. Only Core, buried in the rubble of a battlefield and, found later, had survived. He stood in the center of the chamber, his head bowed. Ilara felt his grief, a wave of ancient sorrow through their bond. She put her arms around his neck, as much as she could. "I'm so sorry, Core." They are at peace. The pack is gone. His voice was heavy. And, yet, a new pack bond has been forged. The purpose is not gone. It is changed. In that moment, looking at the last guardian in a tomb of his people, Ilara understood her role. She was not his owner, nor his master. She was his pack. And, a pack needed a den, a place to be safe, to heal, and to grow. Last Haven, with its dormant but intact technology, its defenses, and its profound peace, was the perfect place. They were home. But, the universe was not done with them. As they began the work of reactivating the station's non-critical systems, a massive, jagged shadow passed over the nebula's outer clouds. A ship, far larger than a mercenary cruiser. Its design was brutal, archaic, and dripping with weapons. It was a Scourge Marauder, a relic from the same era as the Corbi Wars, a predator species thought extinct. It had been lying dormant in the nebula's depths, and the energy signatures from Last Haven's reactivation had stirred it. A harsh, grating transmission filled the Gulliver's calms and echoed through the station. It was a language of claws and hunger, translated by Core's systems. Life signs detected. Corbi sent. Prey. The hunt resumes. The ancient war had found its last soldier. Part 5. The Scourge Marauder ship, a jagged claw of black metal and pulsating red energy nodes, began to tear through the nebula's outer defenses, its weapons firing blasts of corrosive plasma that ate at the ionic storms. This was no corporate hunter. This was a primal enemy, a creature of instinct and annihilation from Core's darkest memories. On the bridge of the Gulliver, docked inside Last Haven, Rourke paled. "We can't fight that. Nothing in this era can." Ilara felt a cold fear, but it was met by a wave of calm, focused resolve from Core. He stood beside her, his full combat systems online. The gentle hum was now a powerful, readiness thrum. The Scourge is mindless hunger. It does not negotiate. It does not retreat. It must be stopped here, or it will spill into the galaxy. He looked at Ilara, his blue optic bright. "This station is not just a refuge, Ilara. It is an Arkansas. And an Ark has defenses." He sent a data packet to her and Rourke. Schematics of Last Haven flared to life. It was not just a garden. Its vines were bioorganic capacitor coils. Its forests were sensor arrays. Its core was a gravitational weapon of immense, subtle power. But the systems are dormant. It would take days to power them up. Rourke exclaimed. "I am Corbi. I am the key." Core turned and moved swiftly towards the station's core chamber. Ilara and Rourke followed. In the core, a massive, crystalline structure pulsed with faint light. Core approached it and, without hesitation, extended several heavy-duty interface cables from his own body, plugging them directly into ports at the base of the crystal. He shuddered as a surge of energy flowed into him. Initiating symbiotic reactivation. I will be the conduit. Ilara, you must guide the defense. You are pack bond. The station will recognize your authority through me. A holographic control interface, designed for core by physiology, shimmered into existence. Core translated it, overlaying simple, intuitive controls for Ilara. She saw the station through 1,000 eyes, sensor feeds, power flows, weapon arcs. It was overwhelming. She felt Core's consciousness supporting hers, a steady pillar in the storm of data. I can't. She whispered. You can. You see, not as a warrior, but as a protector. That is what it needs. Outside, the Scourge ship finished its approach, launching a swarm of drop pods that slammed into the station's outer hull, disgorging dozens of Scourge warriors. They were insectoid nightmares, all clicking claws and acidic spit, moving with vicious speed. They began to tear their way inward. Ilara, her hands hovering over the controls, took a deep breath. She didn't think about tactics. She thought about her home, her friend. She thought about protecting. Her first command was not an attack. She willed the station's luminescent vines to life. They lashed out, not to crush, but to entangle, wrapping around Scourge warriors and immobilizing them with powerful bioelectric shocks. She redirected atmospheric systems, creating vortex winds in corridors that confused and slowed the invaders. The Scourge ship fired its main cannon, a beam of red disintegration energy aimed at the core. Core! Ilara cried. Hold focus, his voice came, strained as he channeled immense power. On the hologram, Ilara saw a gravity lens option. She grabbed the control. She didn't calculate. She felt. She pictured the beam bending away, like light around a stone. The station's core pulsed. A gravitational field, invisible and powerful, warped space in front of the beam, bending it harmlessly away into the nebula. The Scourge ship, enraged, moved to point-blank range, preparing to unleash a full broadside. Rourke, from the Gulliver, yelled, Ilara, we need a knockout punch or we're dust. Ilara looked at the station's main weapon. It wasn't a cannon. It was a harmonic resonator. It required a specific, tuned frequency to shatter Scourge bioarmor. The frequency was lost. She had no idea what it was. She looked at Core, plugged into the core, his light blazing. He was the last of his kind. He held all their knowledge. Core, I need the song. The song to break them. Core's optic met hers. He understood. He began to broadcast a signal, not through the station, but from himself. It was a complex, beautiful, and sad sound, the combined memory of the core by pack bond, a song of unity, of home, of defiance. It was the antithesis of the Scourge's mindless hunger. Ilara fed that song into the resonator. The station's entire structure began to hum, harmonizing with Core's broadcast. The power built, not as a destructive force, but as a precise, surgical vibration. As the Scourge ship fired its broadside, Ilara unleashed the harmony. A wave of silent, shimmering energy expanded from the station. It passed through the Gulliver and Ilara harmlessly, a feeling of profound peace. But, where it touched the Scourge technology, the effect was catastrophic. The red energy nodes on the ship flared and, then, shattered like glass. The corrosive plasma bolts dissolved mid-air. The Scourge warriors on the station froze, their chitinous armor cracking into fine dust, the creatures inside falling, unharmed but stripped of their weapons. The Marauder ship went dark, its systems scrambled into permanent inertness, a dead husk. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, Core disconnected from the core, the cables retracting. He swayed, his light dimmed. Ilara rushed to him. Core. He leaned into her touch. The song was remembered. The pack was remembered. His voice was weak, but content. He had not just fought, he had honored his lost people. He had used their memory, not for destruction, but for protection. In the weeks that followed, the story spread across the fringe and back to the Galactic Commons. Not a story of a terrifying weapon, but of a guardian. of a lost protector and the human girl who had awakened its heart. They spoke of a battle where the ultimate weapon was a song, and victory was achieved without a single life taken. Omnicorp quietly retracted its bounty. Scholar Varys published a paper theorizing that the Corby's true power was in their bonds, not their blades. The galaxy began to look at the legend anew. On Last Haven, life took root. Rourke decided to stay, bringing his family. Other outcasts, those tired of the galaxy's greed, heard the tale and came seeking sanctuary. Ilara, with Kor by her side, became the steward of the haven. Kor no longer looked like a grim war dog. Under Ilara's care and the station's biotech, luminous, vine-like growths now traced patterns across his alloy, and flowers of crystalline light bloomed at his joints. He was a part of the garden, a guardian in truth. One evening, as a new sunset, simulated by the station, painted the interior domes in gold and violet, Ilara sat by a tranquil pond, her back against Kor's warm side. A group of children, human, Sion, and others, played nearby, laughing without fear. One little boy ran up and hugged Kor's leg without hesitation. Kor's hum was a soft, joyful purr. Ilara smiled, looking at the peaceful community growing around her. They had ignored the ancient alien war dog, fearing a monster. She had seen a friend. And, in doing so, she hadn't just changed the game of power in the galaxy. She had ended it, and started something better.